Hello friends, Ben Ochart here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's do our weekly lap of the fish room. I have some updates on fish that were moved and fish that are about to be moved. And let's take a look at every tank and every fish and see what's going on in here. I appreciate you joining me for these weekly laps. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Let's start with the 55-gallon planted tank, and things in here are a lot calmer since I removed the Buenos Aires tetras that you saw in that last video, the please don't eat my tetras video. Interestingly enough, these lemon tetras, there's about 5 of them in here, and they were all tucked up into this side of the tank and not really doing much, just sort of staring out of the side panel. They become a lot more active since the Buenos Aires tetras were removed from the aquarium. So obviously, even though there was not really active aggression or nipping going on, obviously the Buenos Aires tetras were impacting the behavior of the fish. So even in this kind of aquarium, there is a dominance and subdominance that can go on and actually impact how the fish are behaving. The plants in this tank are doing great, as you can see. They're thriving. And again, I say it over and over again, but a big shout out to the co-op for root tabs and liquid fertilizers and heaters and lights and plants and everything else that they've done to support me on this project. I would say at this point it is being very, very successful. I am including some zucchini. You can see there where I impaled it on that piece of driftwood, and they've been working at it very steadily. The fish peck at it, and of course the plecos and the whiptail catfish, which you can see underneath this log here. So I'm hoping I'm going to see the val on this side of the tank all of a sudden make a big resurgence since I removed the Buenos Aires tetras, who were shaving it back consistently. You can see the little autos up there, all 4 of them. Very cute. Looks like they're having a little board meeting. They do a great job with algae. Actually did some work on the black-bearded algae. You can see that in that black-bearded algae experiment that I talk about. There's one of the albino plecos just underneath that rock there. That's one of the plecos that came out of that little 5-gallon pleco nursery that I have. And we have some swords, we have some anubias, some crypts, some java fern tucked in there. On the side there coming out, that's java fern. And of course we have a little bit of Sprite that usually floats around, but very often it will settle back down into the plants depending on the water current. You can see my pagoda snail back there. Just a great looking snail. And you can catch some of the neons. It's about 10 neons in here, but they like to hide down here. So I suspect they're going to start coming out more when I add the additional neons. I'm adding 5 more neons. Should give me a total of 15. And I think that's going to make them a little bolder, a little more willing to get out. Rasboras continue to school very nicely, which I like a lot. And more on that in a minute. Over here in the 90-gallon, where I made some recent changes, you can see the Buenos Aires tetras, and it looks like they went from a dominant position and were swimming all over the 55-gallon. And now that they're in a more subdominant position in a tank with much bigger fish, They're really staying bundled up tight, really schooling tightly together, which I love watching. And it just goes to show that certain kinds of behaviors, and of course schooling being more of a survival type of behavior, certain behaviors will get triggered depending on the circumstances that the fish is in. And in this case, the fish was in a very much a subdominant position with much larger fish that occasionally were going after him just out of curiosity. And so what this is doing is it's forcing them to swim around more as a school, and they're definitely operating as a sort of dither fish in this aquarium. Silver dollars continue to put on size. You can see him here. It's getting to a point now where I can't tell the original large adults that were in here and the additional babies that I put in. They're all a very good size now. Someone said that they were plant destroyers. I'm not really concerned about that, since the plant in here is one of those old plastic plants from Elite Cichlids, who unfortunately is no longer in business. So they can chew on that plastic plant all they want. I don't care. The geos continue to be pretty spectacular. Suryaminensis, that's how they were sold to me, but someone told me that they might be altifons. You see Hecali there, backing off from the red spotted severum. Of course, the dominant severum is the red shoulder right here. It's the red shoulder seldom. You seldom see the red shoulder, but there he is. He's very shy. He usually hangs out in the darker corners of the aquarium in the back. Here's that old electric blue Ochart that I inherited. He's been kind of acting a little odd recently, but he did take food. He was taking food and eating again after going for 2 days without eating. I was getting a little bit concerned, but seems to be doing better now. I think it's a pretty old fish, probably in the final third of his life, but one of the biggest electric blue Ocharts I've seen. We go over here to the 29-gallon hospital tank. It kind of gives you an idea of the future of that 55-gallon planted tank, because what I have here is red-tailed rasboras, really cute little red-tailed rasboras, and they're going to be going over into that 55-gallon planted pretty soon. Actually, they're very healthy. They've been eating really, really well. They got like a little bit of a neon green and black stripe in the body, and I'm hoping as they get older they get a little more red in the tail. But I've been really happy with them, happy with their activity level and how they're eating. They're very hardy. Here's my little SAE, my Siamese algae eater, who did such a great job with the black algae on that Anubias that I brought over. Not sure what's happening here. He might be eating this plant. I know I saw some snails on this plant, so maybe the snails were munching on it too. I know they love to eat zucchini. You can see right here what they did to a piece of zucchini. They cored it out like an apple. So I'm not sure if it was the snails or if it was the SAE. I've got some pagoda snails in here. You see they bury themselves in the sand. You can see a striped one back there. Not sure what triggers it. No doubt some type of survival response, but they'll bury themselves. There's a couple babies in here. A few of them are buried, a few of them are not. A couple more that have buried themselves. And there's a couple that are climbing. See one on top of the filter there, and one right here, right at the front. So So they're all over the place. They're all the offspring of that one large snail in the 55. Here are those 5 additional neons. And I know neons tend to be kind of fragile and you kind of roll the dice, but I think I got a pretty hardy batch. These 5 are all acting the way you'd hope a new fish acts, right? Very active. They go after food aggressively. And they're also schooling. I'm hoping when I add them to the 10 neons that are in the 55, that'll create more activity. In other words, that they'll come out from under those crypt plants and start moving around the tank more. Here's the live bear tank. And as you can see, a lot of the babies are making it. You see the little guys there mixed in. Those are babies that somehow avoided getting eaten. So little by little, the population of this tank is growing. Some guppies in here, some mollies, and some platies. There's some Sprite, which allows babies to hide for a while, and I believe there's some babies in there now. There usually are some babies in the Sprite. There's that nearite snail. And you can see the nearite eggs all over the wood there. That's the reason why I didn't bring in nearites to clean up black algae on that Anubias, because they leave those eggs everywhere. There's a piece of zucchini in this tank as well. I'm also using the almond leaves, which add minerals, and the fish peck on them. They're just kind of good in general. Some people call them magic leaves. Not sure if they're magic, but they don't hurt. Also a little bit of Anubias in this tank. It's got a little black algae on the edges, so I'm counting on that nearite to get up there and clean it up. Little Picus cory. Picus cory catfish. And there's a sort of standard cory in here as well, and a pleco that has really interesting markings. But he's underneath this log. You're not going to see him today, but there's a pleco under there. And he's got the coolest markings, kind of like a brown and black patterns on the body. He's working on that piece of zucchini. Go over to the betta tank. Here's the old Dumbo, flaring out as usual. Yeah, you're a real tough guy. He didn't have as much pink in his body when I first got him. He was mostly like a pale blue, but I think he likes it here. He's been getting more and more pink. Very pretty. Love the shape of his fins, especially those big Dumbo fins in the front there. Here's our little red and blue guy. They love playing in the Sprite, and the Sprite seems to be thriving in this tank, shooting sections out of the water up towards the glass. So the Sprite is thriving here. There's also some artificial plants that they can play around in. Some Anubias, which seems to be thriving. There's some plecos in here and some coolie loaches. They're building bubble nests. You can see one up there. Let me crank it down a little bit so you can see the bubble nest. See that bubble nest up there? And there's one on this side too. So that's a good sign when you have betta. That's a good sign that they're actually doing well. When you have male betta and you don't see bubble nests, something might be wrong. Let's walk over to the 300. They're due for a feeding, so they should be coming over to me. Here they come. This is a little brighter than I normally keep the tank, just so you can see them. It's usually a little dimmer here off to the sides. I kind of like them to have a little spot where they can kind of go and chill. Maybe whether it's be behind a plant or in a dimmer part of the tank. Crazy looking eye biter. Buccochromis rhodiosia yellow. Little Venusis, Nimbochromis venusis. Malawi hawk. Sand diver. And then we have a living stone eye looking right into the camera. There he goes. Lethrinops oculatus. This one here is a turquoise hat. It's one of my favorite color patterns on any fish. It's called a coingi. This one right here. Of course, here comes the hawk. It's a bicolor 500. That bar on the body, it's almost like an orange. See that? Blue to almost goes to orange. You see a red shoulder, it's basically a bicolor 500 with a red stripe instead of an orange stripe. It's a coingi. There's that big Malawi gar back there with that odd face, that funny lower lip. Very unusual fish. Then we have a tangerine tiger, an orange body with a blue face back there. So this tank has calmed down considerably since I've covered up those breeding pits that the fish had built. This trout, this big old trout, and the living stone eye. This one right here had built those pits. There's the Fusco back there, who actually went on a growth spurt and is now bigger than the living stone eye and bigger than the Venusis. He was smaller than both of them when I first brought him into the tank. So he's growing like a weed. He'll probably end up being the dominant Nimbochromis and quite possibly the dominant fish in the tank. If he's able to wrestle it away from the trout. See, the trout's a little colored down now. It doesn't have the black in the anal fin, the bottom half of the body. So he's not in that breeding dress. So he's mellowed out now. So the whole tank is more peaceful because of it. Here's Sally the Salvini. Love that fish. Red tiger Oscar. Jack Dempsey. Actually Jackie Dempsey, it's a female. Just like the Salvini is Sally. The Salvini, it's a female as well. Females have a red belly. Just got lucky, didn't know about it until after I brought her home. Green Terror continues to do well. Love the blue on a Green Terror. Not sure why they call it a Green Terror when it's primarily blue, but I guess it does have some green in it. There's green like in the face. Seems to go blue, but that might also be because of the lighting. This is the Nicaragua. This giant here is a Vieja, a variety of Vieja. Viejas come in a variety of colors. This one's a giant, big gentle giant, fortunately, over 10 inches. I just finished washing my socks. Sounds kind of funny, doesn't it? But these are the socks that, the water that goes into the sump from the tank, it goes in through these socks. They're like pre-filters, basically. And on the 210, I have 2 of these socks. They're 4 inches across. And then on the 300 gallon, I have 1. Both pipes dump into this 7-inch across sock. And they're inside out now. They just came out of the washer. I just wash them with a little bit of bleach, and they get a double rinse, and they're good to go. I have a pump here I'm going to be adding. I might just end up using it on the 300 gallon. This is that kind of pump that will kick in the event of a power outage. This one was picked up from the Aquarium co-op. Thank you to my friends at the co-op. And you can see it's got two outlets on it. So I'll put an air stone on each side of the tank, and if I ever have a power outage, I'll have some air breaking up the surface, and that way the fish don't suffocate because of a lack of water movement. The co-op also sent me this real nice light. This one is, I think it's about 36 inches, I think. Let me see. Yeah, 36. Aquarium co-op LED plant light. I did a full review on this plant, plant light. I'll put a link at the top of the video. And this light will probably go onto the 90, because right now the light that I have on the 90, you can see it hangs over just a little bit on each side. Oh, just about an inch or so on each side. So this 36 will sit on top, and it has 6 different light adjustments. Now, it is full spectrum, so it might promote a little bit of algae growth, but I'm not that concerned about it because I'd like to turn this tank eventually into a planted discus tank. So in the long haul, it'll work out okay. Also, if you come over to the sink, you feel for the life of a fish keeper in a fish room. You see this down here, that's 3 bags of Purigen that are being recharged. 50% bleach and 50% water. After 24 hours, you go ahead and give it a real good rinse, and then you soak it again for 24 hours with a little bit of water conditioner. Something like C-Chem Prime works. You can use C-Chem Prime, you can use in the light, C-Chem Prime or Fritz Complete. Any kind of a conditioner, you let it sit for 24 hours and then it's good to go. The 3 bags that are in there were really dark brown. So usually, very often I've thrown the bags out once they get exhausted, but I would decide to go ahead and recharge these, and I'll throw them into the sump of the 300 gallon. Can't hurt. And you could recharge them up to 8 to 10 times, and they'll come back and do the job. They do a great job in keeping water really pristine. Here's my little pleco nursery. They're all hiding inside of that piece of driftwood. Here's one daredevil hanging out. But there's probably about 25 or 20 in there. And there was some zucchini attached to the wood there. You can see they've completely decimated it. Little albino back there. Probably a couple more albinos left. The dad is the dad of all the plecos is living in this tank, whereas the mother of all the plecos is in this tank, and she'll come out after a feeding. Loves to eat the cichlid food, which is loaded with protein. Little side view, a big giant piece of driftwood that I picked up from a local lake. Had to cut it down to get it into the tank, but I love it. It's a great piece of wood. And all it cost me was picking it up and bringing it home and really cleaning it up. If you saw my video about the Northfin product that I did a review on, you know that I keep a blend of food. This is just a blend of a whole bunch of different foods in here. Northfin, Sarah, and Extreme, just a whole bunch of stuff, Donachi. So at any rate, I've added Northfin to the mix and the fish are just loving it. I'll show you. Give them a little bit more than that. Got to put a lot of food when you got big fish like this. One of the advantages of a pre-filter I have in the back there, it's a sponge covering up the FX6. Not sure if you can make it out, but that sponge right there, what happens is food will stick to it. So instead of just getting sucked into the filter, the food goes onto the sponge and then gets picked off and eaten by the fish. A little more cost effective than having it just go into the filter. I feed the same mix to the South and Central Americans. There's a lot of vegetable product in there. So they're getting veggies, they're getting protein, and it's all real high quality food. Very often the Jack Dempsey will just hang back, but you can see she's getting right into the mix there and eating. That's a real good sign. Here's the Rusties. The Rusties hang back and act shy, but when it comes to eating, they go after it pretty hard. Here's the Rusty. They'll grab a mouthful of food and then go off somewhere and chew. The Vieja will get up there in the middle of it all, but then usually goes down and then just harvests, will just kind of pick food off the bottom. The Oscars, they just get right into it, practically jumping out of the water. Very aggressive eaters. There he is. As soon as I feed, he knows. Actually, she knows. That's the female pleco. That's the mom of all those baby plecos. Then the dad has a bunch of bristles. It's a bushy nose pleco. And that way you can tell the male has all the bristles. This one doesn't have any bristles. That's the female. If I were to put them back together and include a cave, they'd probably start making more plecos right away. These fish will get the same food as the other cichlids, but I will include some of the community crave, some of this food, so that the Buenos Aires tetras can have a shot at something smaller. But in this tank, I just grind up some of the crave, and the fish go crazy on it. The fish that are at the top, they hit the surface real hard. And what that does is it starts to knock food down, and then the fish that eat off the bottom have a better shot, like the neons. So by hitting the surface hard, they're actually helping to get food to the other fish. Because I have those Cory catfish in here, and some plecos, and that whiptail cat, and the little autos, I put in some of these Sarah algae wafers, which they love. I'll usually drop in about 2 or 3 of them. You can see the size of them. All the fish really go after them. But those wafers go into all the aquariums that have plecos in them, or any kind of algae eating fish. So the tank with the Siamese algae eater will also get one. This hospital tank here will get one. I don't put any in the 90 because there's no plecos in that tank. So there you go. There's the update with the fish room this week's lap of the fish room. If you have any thoughts, ideas, suggestions, please share them below in the comments. I do learn a lot from you, probably as much as you learn from me. And if you'd like to support the channel, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, hit that bell, and consider becoming a member of the Garage Gang. This is a garage, the Garage Gang, and become a monthly supporter of the channel by becoming a Patreon. Details of that program are in the description. Starts for as little as $3 a month. Also, I hope to see you on Saturday. We can talk about fish and filters and substrates and everything else at the Saturday Cichlids and Coffee live stream. Cichlids in the name, but we get into everything from live bears to bettas to cichlids to you name it. And it is at 11 a.m. Central. That's noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Great group of fish keepers. Hope to see you there. All right, my friends, that's it for me. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.